meet you.
Okay. All right. Thank you for everybody who is joining us tonight. Just want to let you know we'll probably be getting started in a couple of minutes. Give everybody a chance to sign in. We'll probably get started right at 6:05. And I don't know if you've heard, but this meeting will be recorded, and so just so you're aware of that. But we'll get started in a few minutes.
And just let another person in.
Okay, it's 6:05. Why don't we begin? First select woman, if you'd like to begin, please.
Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for hosting this open meeting. We look forward to working with you all on the Route 67 Bank Street spot improvement. And we can't wait for this project to get started. As you know, I took over this position October 22nd, 2020. So we look forward to finally getting this going, and hopefully down the road, you're able to present this to the remaining of the Board of Selectmen. With that said, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Mark Nielsen.
All right, thank you. Again, my name is Mark Nielsen. I am the Director of Planning with the Naugatuck Valley Council of Governments. We are a council of governments that represents the 19 cities and towns up and down the Naugatuck Valley, stretching from the city of Shelton to the south up to Waterbury, Watertown, Thomaston to the north. We also include the city of Bristol. But we got this project started a lot longer ago than we'd like to imagine, when we were still the Valley Council of Governments, which was just centered around the four lower valley towns of Shelton, Ansonia, Derby, and Seymour. And this project got started was an outgrowth of a planning study that was conducted by the COG that looked at traffic congestion and problems along Route 67 that runs through Seymour. After that study, some initial recommendations were put forward, and the agency was able to secure some funding to conduct a preliminary engineering study, not a design, but a study, to really sort of identify spot improvements along the more critical areas of Route 67. The area that was selected for more detailed analysis was that area from Franklin Street out toward the Claridis Village Shopping Center. That engineering study was completed a few years ago. And after that was completed, we entered into negotiations with state DOT to initiate the design of the project, which will lead into a construction. As part of the preliminary engineering study, we did conduct several public information meetings and presented some of the initial recommendations. We heard some comments and criticisms of some of the actions that we were considering, and those were taken into account as we moved into the design phase. And tonight, what we're going to do is present the preliminary design of the recommendations of spot improvements. And we're looking for your input, your comments, your opinions, what's good, what's bad. And there are several, before we get started, this meeting is being recorded, and it's live streaming on our YouTube channel. And after the meeting, it will be posted on the NVCOG website. And so you could, if you have to, anybody has to leave before the end of the meeting, or somebody wasn't able to attend tonight, they will be able to hear the presentation in its entirety. And we are, like I said, looking forward to getting your comments. And if anybody's familiar with Zoom, the new reality, you can enter into the chat box any questions, comments that you may have. And we're going to address those at the end of the presentation. At the end of the presentation, we'll provide an opportunity for people to also speak if they'd like to. Some people may be not participating online, but maybe via telephone. Those people will also be given an opportunity to speak and ask questions. And this is not your only opportunity to offer comments. We will hold the comment period open for 14 days after this meeting, and you'll be able to provide written comments directly to the agency, or you can send emails to Karen or myself. So that's sort of the how we're going to operate tonight. Before we begin, I just want to introduce other members of the NVCOG staff. Karen Svets is the transportation engineer, who's the project manager, and she's also joined tonight by Richard Crowther, who is our tech expert at the agency. So they're going to be part of my staff. With that, I'm going to introduce and turn the meeting over to Mike Joyce. He's the project engineer with Milo and McBroom, and they have been tasked with doing the design work of that. So Mike, you can begin your presentation.
Thank you, Mark. Again, my name is Michael Joyce. I'm a registered professional engineer with Milo and McBroom. With me tonight from our office as well is Eric Fisher. On the phone as well from Connecticut DOT is Greg Soja, Jeff Faffinger, and Jason Boyce, who will be available for questions regarding the DOT process that's involved with this project. As Mark summarized, this project does have a history of moving through different iterations from preliminary engineering to preliminary design. We are at that preliminary design phase. And the important part of this process is to engage and invite the public to contribute once again to the design of the project before we were given authorization to proceed with what's called final design. As we mentioned before, there's a lot of different features in the corridor that we're looking at, ranging from traffic congestion, traffic safety, parking access management, pedestrian improvements, utility relocations that will be necessary, and also the aesthetic of the corridor as it relates to what the town of Seymour has already started in their downtown area. For orientation, this plan on your screen today represents, with north being up, the limits of the project. The project on the western side begins near the signalized entrance to the Claridus Village Shopping Center, and then it extends east all the way up to the Naugatuck River Bridge on the right side of your screen. That's a length of about 2,400 feet. The project also extends down River Street, approximately 1,000 feet, to incorporate some pedestrian and some lane arrangement improvements that'll help provide some connectivity along the entire corridor. As we go through the presentation, we will zoom in on different features of the project so we can talk about those in more detail. But the main intersection improvements occur at the unsignalized intersection of Claridus Village, which is right next to McDonald's and across from Johnson Avenue, at the intersection of Beecher Street and Church Street, where some minor improvements are also proposed. And the bulk of the improvements are then focused between Old Drive East and the new Walgreens intersection, all the way down past Martha to the intersection of Franklin and River, and then down River Street. Those of you who are familiar with the corridor know this area very well. Johnson Avenue comes down at a steep angle at a very sharp skew, one way with an existing retaining wall which supports it. During the preliminary engineering effort, we looked at closing Johnson Avenue and incorporating new cul-de-sac or turnarounds in this area. And as we advanced from preliminary engineering into the design you'll see tonight, it was determined with the town and NVCOG that the prudent option to close that and possibly do a full acquisition of this property was pursued as not as the best use of the money for this project. Currently at the intersection with near McDonald's, it is a two-way in and out driveway. While it is technically signed on the opposite side against the wall as no left turn, there is no physical prohibition to this movement. So the project proposes some minor modifications. So on the screen, Johnson Avenue to the top, McDonald's down to the lower right. In this area, we're proposing a central island that will prohibit left turns, mountable island that will be prohibit left-hand turns for vehicles coming out of the development. All vehicles want to exit development will need to go to the signalized entrance. It's already on the western side of the project. We are also providing a small pocket so that any vehicles wishing to turn left into the site won't block the through movement of vehicles who want to travel and continue westbound on Route 67. As we extend down the corridor, we get to the intersection of Church and Beecher Street. During the preliminary engineering study, we had several alternatives, which included creating a new T intersection further up the hill with Beecher and Church. And some of those required impacts to this area here. Very lengthy discussions with the Russian Club regarding the use of this area for their loading and parking in other areas. As you'll notice, as we advance the design, we've pulled back from that and proposing something slightly different, which focuses more at the intersection. This area of the project, as shown, has been simplified to provide just a bit of turning radius and space improvements at this intersection so that a vehicle coming down that wishes to turn left onto Bank Street does not block the ability for a vehicle to get by and access Route 67 eastward. Again, Beecher Street is one way up the hill from the intersection, no modifications. There will be a slight widening of this island. If we go back a picture, slight widening of this island in this area to allow for that new lane configuration. To help with the direction of traffic, this island in here will be a flush island, but it'll be texturized, whether that's a concrete stamp or stamped asphalt, that has yet to be determined, but there will be an island here that will delineate where the vehicles should more clearly be directed. As we move down the corridor, we have properties that currently exist, and while there was demolition of properties on the corner, there still exist residents and businesses on the southern side that include some on-street parking in limited areas. Across from that is the existing sidewalk condition along the slope that supports Walgreens. In this area, we're going to be proposing to widen the north side of Route 67 to support the improvements that we'll talk about in a minute coming from the intersection. As we continue down the corridor, our improvements will also have impacts to the retaining wall in front of 100 Bank Street. This sign here starts to get into the big improvement that we're going to talk about in the project, which is the race to merge as you approach Martha Street coming out of the intersection. Again, this widening will occur in front of the retaining wall. This wall will be replaced further back. There will be some parking impacts on this property, but this wall will be reconstructed to match the existing wall to remain. So it'll be another masonry wall. So back to this area again. What we're proposing in this area is to widen Bank Street to provide 2 through lanes all the way up past Martha Street, and then an extended right turn lane that will allow right turns into Walgreens, but also a lane that stays through to Old Drive East. This will allow vehicles that want to travel through the corridor to stay in the left lane all the way through, and vehicles who want to go to Martha, Walgreens Shopping Plaza, or Old Drive in the neighborhoods off of Rimmon can stay in one lane as well. We feel this is a significant improvement given how quickly vehicles need to race to merge currently under the current condition. By holding the southern edge of pavement, which is different from our preliminary engineering analysis, we're able to create and establish 8 legitimate on-street parking spaces for the residents and the businesses in this section. And as we get to more closer to the intersection, we will get into some more improvements, which I'll show next. This kind of looks at that intersection where the 2 vehicles that are coming out, the intersection have forced to merge before you even get to Martha Street. We'll be continuing that all the way up, and this sidewalk will be new. There'll be a wall along that side of Bank Street. Currently at the intersection of Franklin and River and Bank, there are a couple of on-street parking spaces, which is fairly odd for a close section of intersection, close spot to the intersection. As we'll show next, this also creates a very long distance for pedestrians to cross, which affects vehicle timings and safety for pedestrians as well. As you can see, this intersection is quite large, and what we'll show next is how we'll look to improve that. We did an analysis in this graphic here. What you'll see in the pinkish color is a new brick paver pattern that will support and match the downtown area. The green areas are new vegetative areas that don't exist today. This area through here is being tightened up considerably. There's a very large radius on the southeastern corner of Route 313, River Street, and Route 67. The turning vehicle movements that we need to accommodate do not need a radius this large. What this offers is the opportunity to create a little more green space and more of a gateway to this portion of town by shortening these distance for pedestrians, bringing this edge of pavement out as well, which removes the on-street parking in front of these 2 businesses here, and focuses the improvements on pedestrian safety and vehicle efficiency. This project will also include new street lighting to match the downtown area. As we continue the project to the south, we work our way down toward River Street. Currently, right now in this picture depicts it, there is an existing sidewalk that wraps around River Street. Back in 2000, under the development improvements associated with Stop and Shop, sidewalks were extended and the bridge was widened on the east side along the Naugatuck River. As you can see in this picture, the sidewalk improvements along Bank Street stop as they wrap around the corner to River Street. Which is unfortunate because the only next section of sidewalk on River Street is along the western side, further down in our project limits. As you can see in this picture, behind in the background is the improved bridge from the 2000. This is the existing original bridge. We look to modify this bridge and widen it to allow sidewalks to come down along from Bank Street, along this western side of River Street, and connect to the existing sidewalk that's further down to the south. This graphic shows a detail of the similar mode of replacement and reconstruction and widening that we'll need to do for this bridge. This parapet on the picture on the left will be removed, and there'll be another beam will be established on the other side of the sewer main, which will remain in place, and the sidewalk will be constructed across the top of the bridge. The traffic improvements for the corridor. We've captured traffic history from 2009, 12, and 15. Over the last year or so, it's been a little bit difficult to capture traffic because of the changing pandemic conditions. But ultimately, about 20,000 vehicles per day travel through the corridor. When we talk about traffic improvements, we use the term level of service, or LOS. Level of service is a measurement of delay at a signal. So for a signalized intersection, less than 10 seconds of delay is a level of service A, and anything over 80 seconds is a level of service F. By looking at the project in its model, we did a model of this using our Vism software to identify the possible improvements. These are actual volumes that are projected into the future for the project to what the corridor may or may not be able to handle. As we move through the corridor, you should be able to see how the traffic moves through the corridor, not only past Martha, as they no longer are forced to merge, but they can pass with each other up to the intersection of Martha and to the Walgreens Plaza, and then on again up to Old Drive East. Now, this graphic may be small for some people, but as we continue past Old Drive East and Walgreens, we then come up to the intersection of Church and Beecher, and again up to the intersection of Old Drive West and ultimately Claridus Village. The reason I bring this up is that in addition to the physical improvements we're doing in the corridor, as part of our preliminary design, Connecticut DOT traffic has asked us to include other signalized intersections in the corridor to be looked at for timing improvements and coordination improvements so that the corridor works efficiently together, not only where we're touching the improvements, but also the timing at the signals just outside our limits. So what does that mean at the end of the day? So at Route 67, at Walgreens, at Route 313, at River Street, and Old Drive, the physical improvements that we're making are subtle, but it's the timing improvements that make a difference. In many cases, we are increasing the level of service by 10 seconds or more at each of these intersections, these approaches, to create what are considered relatively good levels of service for these intersections. A's and B's are good numbers to have for intersections, especially when they're main intersections near an interchange. Again, this is for the weekday morning peak hour and the weekday PM peak hour. You'll notice in a couple locations we have asterisks. These two locations have new those intersections currently don't have that, but by adding it in, we do reduce the level of service, but that only happens when a pedestrian actually calls those buttons, and that occurs only up at Old Drive West where we see those reductions. Again, limited, we believe those are going to be limited instances where pedestrians are coming out there, but in case they do, they will be protected safely as an exclusive pedestrian phase. Citation now over to Jason Boyce from the Division of Rights of Way from Connecticut DOT.
Thanks, Mike. My name is Jason Boyce. I am from the Department of Transportation, Division of Rights of Way. I'm a project coordinator for the Division of Rights of Way. And I'm here to give a brief overview on the right-of-way process associated with the project. So the Division of Rights of Way acquires all property rights necessary for the project. All property rights will be acquired in accordance with Connecticut General Statutes, sections 13A73 and 13A98E, and the Federal Uniform Relocation Assistance and Real Properties Acquisition Act of 1970 as amended. Proposed impacts for this project consist of, in the current design, partial acquisitions, permanent easements, temporary easements and rights, and of course, these are subject to change as the design progresses. This is what we refer to as our schedule of owners based on the preliminary design. This outlines the proposed properties that will be impacted as a result of the project. And as you see listed here are sightline easements, partial acquisitions, and then another sightline easement. Now, so each impacted property owner will go through a right-of-way acquisition process. The start of the right-of-way acquisition process begins with a letter of intent to acquire. This kicks off the right-of-way process and is often the property owner's first involvement with the right-of-way office. From there, evaluation will occur. The department determines the fair market value of the impacts to the property to establish an offer of just compensation. Often this is done by utilizing an appraisal. Once the valuation is complete, the property owner will be presented with an offer letter. it'll be a written offer letter from the department outlining each portion of compensation as determined by the valuation. Then negotiations will occur. The owner is given a reasonable amount of time to consider the state's offer and enter into negotiations. At the completion of negotiations, an acquisition will occur. An acquisition can occur in one of two ways. An agreement can be reached between the state and the property owner. And if that happens, there's an abbreviated real estate closing in which the state pays all the associated costs with the closing. If the property owner and the state cannot reach an agreement, the Commissioner of Transportation does have the authority to acquire property rights by eminent domain. Eminent domain does not preclude the owner from continued negotiations with the state. Owners are still entitled to the state's offer. The funds are deposited into the court and the owner can petition for withdrawal of those funds at any time. Once the funds are deposited into the court, they are out of control of the DOT, and depending on the encumbrances that are associated with the property, the withdrawal process can take some time. The owner will have 6 months from the date of condemnation to file an appeal with the court if continued negotiations break down and an agreement cannot be reached. Additionally, the state is only able to acquire what is necessary for the project. The state cannot acquire anything above and beyond that. Now, timing for the acquisition, timing for the acquisitions. So all property rights must be acquired by the design completion date. And the current design completion date based on the current schedule is May 4th, 2022. And now I'll turn it back over to Mike to continue with the presentation.
Thank you, Jason. And one other thing I think we should talk about too, and while we showed a schedule of owners that listed the permanent impacts in the project, there may also be some temporary construction rights on several properties that won't require evaluation, but there will be temporary construction rights, whether it's right to reconstruct driveways or some erosion control and those kind of things, but those will also be identified and pursued as part of this project. So where do we go from here? Once we complete the public information process and the public involvement process with you, we then proceed to what's called final design approval, where we move into starting our final design efforts. Part of that final design effort involves getting some environmental permits and some environmental coordination when it comes to different impacts the project may have. We'll take a look at some historic and cultural resource impacts. We do have a property on the National Register of Historic Places at 100 Bank Street, which is the corner of Martha and Bank. That's been looked at already, and it's been determined that because of the modifications that have happened to that site over the years, that the proposal that we have before you now does not have what's considered an adverse impact. What we will be sensitive to the aesthetic and the history of that particular site by matching the retaining wall and its reconstruction. The work we'll be doing down at Bridge 01585, which is the River Street Bridge over the Little River. That will require a flood management certificate from Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection for work within the floodplain and the floodway of that Little River and its associated confluence with the Naugatuck River. We did do investigations regarding the natural diversity database. Currently, the project does not fall within one of the areas that would be deemed sensitive to any sensitive species in that area. And we also will be with the town of Seymour to obtain a permit from their Conservation and Inland Wetlands Commission. As we go through all those pieces, we'll be advancing the semifinal and final design toward construction documents. So what is our project schedule? As Jason mentioned, there's a design completion date which ties into the right-of-way acquisition funds. We need to be providing our final design plans with permit conditions, et cetera, in March of 2022. And we have a potential advertising date currently scheduled for the beginning of June in 2022. Funding for the project, the construction of the project is being funded under the STPG Bridgeport Urban Program, where 80% of the costs are paid for by the federal government and 20% by the state of Connecticut. At this time, based upon the preliminary design that we're presenting to you tonight, the estimated cost for the project is $6,125,000, and that includes contingencies, incidentals, materials, testing, inspection, et cetera, once the project is bid. That completes the bulk of our presentation tonight. We are available for comments and questions. We've reposted the instructions here, whether you've been able to follow along via Zoom or would like to call in. Either way, we do have a chat feature that we'll review now to see which chats and which comments have been offered, so we can begin to respond to them. Again, we've also listed, and we'll leave this up for a moment, this is the email contact information for Mark Nielsen and Karen Spetz at NVCOG, who can submit your comments up to 14 days after this public hearing, public information meeting. And you can also submit them in writing to NVCOG at 49 Leavenworth Street, 3rd floor, Waterbury, Connecticut, and to Karen's attention. That being said, this completes our presentation this evening, and we are happy to take any questions from anyone either on the panel or from the public.
Okay, thank you, Mike. And as Mike indicated, anybody who has an interest is, speak tonight, you're more than welcome to. I did check the chat box there. Nobody has entered anything in. Rich, is that what you have as well?
Correct. So if you want to open up to anybody on the phone, please remind them to unmute themselves so they can speak.
All right. Well, with that, anybody interested in making a comment, tonight, please. And I would ask, if you are interested, please identify yourself, your name, address, and so for have that for the record.
Could I ask one question?
Sure.
Alex Bazinski, Housatonic Wire, 109 River Street, down by the bridge there. Will you be tearing down the houses by Ed's Cleaner Stuff at the south side of Route 67? Will you be taking those buildings down?
No.
They will not be?
Now, since the preliminary engineering designs, the original intent was to discuss that, the possibility of that. And as they further investigated the impacts across the street at the historic building, they found out that those issues weren't as monumental as originally thought, given the historic significance there. There's considerable right-of-way also available below Walgreens for us to build and widen on that side. So based upon right-of-way costs and acquisitions and schedule and those kind of things, the collective decision was made between DOT and the design team and NVCOG that the more prudent approach would be to keep those properties. We've improved the parking in front of them and widened on the north side.
Okay, one other question. On the corner when you're heading northbound on 313 at the light there at Stop and Shop and so on, you're reducing the crosswalk distance in there by narrowing that intersection, that right-hand turn, if you want to say, to go over the bridge into downtown Seymour, heading east, that would be. I've worked at lumber, Housatonic Wire for 45 years, and I would go home that way. And it was nice to have 3 lanes at that light rather than, I think you're reducing it down to 2 lanes now, is that correct?
So the people approaching from River Street?
From, heading north on River Street and either going to go straight to Stop and Shop, left up to Oxford, or right into downtown. Right now we've got 3 lanes at that light versus you're going to narrow that down into 2 lanes. Is that correct?
There are, it feels like 3 lanes that are out there now because of the width and the radius of that right turn lane. But technically there is just the 2 lanes. Now, we're not just doing that improvement there, and I'm going to show you on my screen again. We do also have the following improvement being proposed. So as you can see, here's your approach. Can you see my screen?
No, not yet.
Technology.
Still not yet.
No luck.
Here we go.
Something's coming.
Success.
Yes.
So obviously this is the approach coming from the south toward the intersection. You'll notice this is really the limit of where that left turn lane begins.
Yeah, yeah, you could squeeze 1 or 2 cars in, I guess, in the right hand to take that right hand turn.
Part of what happens there is that some of those left-hand turn vehicles, when they back up through here, they kind of choke off the intersection sometimes during the peak hour. Part of this project, what it's going to do, and I'll go to the rendering here. Let's see here. So we're extending that left turn lane much further down the intersection, down the street, to give more room for those cars so they don't block anybody coming up to the right.
Okay.
We did this analysis as well. The level of service that we have for that right turn movement, even in the peak volumes, is fine. While it's a convenience there, it does present a pedestrian safety issue that we're trying to improve in the corridor. These are large distances that are there today for them to cross through here. And what happens with that is that that extra distance adds time for the delay to the vehicle. So we're trying to balance this so that we can make part of this project was specifically focusing on pedestrian connectivity from the properties up to the north from Rimmon in the west to connect this to downtown area and the newly constructed Naugatuck River Greenway Trail. So it's a kind of a multimodal approach to making sure that not only the vehicles moving efficiently, but the pedestrians are safe as well.
Did you take into consideration the right-hand turn with the tractor trailer to make the swing?
Yes.
Okay. Just, yeah, because I've seen too many trucks coming through there, you know, making a real tight turn, but okay, as long as you figured that. Okay, makes sense. Thank you. And when do you expect construction on this? 2022?
Current advertisement date is June of 2022.
Okay.
If things move faster or for some reason then okay. If not, then obviously it'd be nice to be able to bid it in a winter period so they could start construction, in April of a year. We anticipate this work. There is signal work, which technically takes some time to get the equipment ordered and delivered, but we would hope that we would be one construction season for this work. But there is structural work for the bridge and retaining wall work in front of Walgreens, which may take some time as well. But the hope would be if we did start in the summer of 2022, that it would be completed, sometime in 2023.
Very good. Thank you.
Anyone else wanted to ask a question or offer a comment? Anybody on the phone would like to make a comment? Okay. And as we mentioned, if you think of something after the meeting is over, do not hesitate to, send us an email or, send us a letter, through the mail with your comment. We're interested in hearing from everyone. And, like we said earlier, all this will be posted on the NVCOG website. And it's very easy to get. It's just nvcogct.gov. And we do have a project webpage that provides a lot more information on this project. This presentation will also be posted, so you can go through it as you'd like. And as we said, this meeting is being recorded, so you could review the meeting as well. So again, last call for any other comments from the public. All right.
On behalf of the Rush Club, I'd like to say thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, that was from is that John's iPhone we're seeing?
Yes.
Yeah, John Borgazano. I'm a member of the Russian Club.
Okay.
I remember your name from the public information meeting before.
Yeah. And just to, and again, this is why we do public information meetings, because sometimes we'll do projects and not understand fully the impact that, what we're suggesting may cause. So again, your participation earlier, really helped, us, to relook at that intersection and, try to avoid any kind of, negative impact. So that's why we go through this process, and we do appreciate everybody's participation. So yeah, thank you. With one last call for any comments, if not hearing anything, we can close the meeting. And again, thank you for everyone who participated. Just before we do end, any other staff from Conda, do you have any comments or anything else you'd like to add, Jeff or Greg?
No, I think Mike covered everything pretty well in his presentation, so we should be all set here.
Okay, good. All right, thank you. All right, with that, again, wish everybody a good evening, and everybody stay safe and stay well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark. Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Are we all just signing off?